High in the European Alps, survival begins the moment the first cold front sweeps across the passes. Snow piles against the rock face, wind presses against the chest like a weight. Nights stretch long enough to test both body and judgment. In these heights, even a small mistake can turn a journey into a search for shelter before the darkness closes in. For centuries, Alpine communities had to read the land the way sailors read the sea, by interpreting winds, slopes, and shifting clouds, knowing that the mountain punished any hesitation. Now imagine a world across the ocean. North America's vast plains, subarctic forests, canyonlands, and frozen plateaus. Different landscapes, different cultures, yet familiar challenges. Winter storms that could bury a settlement overnight, thin margins of food supply, the constant pressure to build dwellings, tools, and strategies that transformed hostile ground into a workable home. Here lies the surprising question that drives this episode. How did two worlds, separated by entire continents, arrive at solutions that look strikingly alike? This isn't a tale of imitation, it's a study in convergence. How human groups, under the weight of cold, scarcity, and unpredictability, engineered answers that reveal a shared pattern of adaptation. Alpine builders shaping stone and snow into protective shells. Native American communities crafting earth-sheltered chambers, mobile structures, and cliffside defenses that controlled airflow, heat, and energy use with remarkable precision. The farther we travel into these stories, the clearer the parallels become. Not because cultures touched, but because nature pushed them toward similar conclusions. Across distant landscapes, the cold demanded problem solvers, and those problem solvers answered with brilliance. Survival in the Alps began long before a storm appeared on the horizon. It started with a constant awareness that the landscape itself was the first and most demanding teacher. A valley that looked peaceful in summer could become a trap of drifting snow by early winter. A clear sky could collapse into a whiteout in minutes. Settlements clung to slopes not for beauty, but because those angles shed avalanches, caught morning sunlight, and offered the slightest protection from mountain winds. Every choice, where to build, where to graze, where to store food, carried the weight of consequence. Across the Atlantic, Native American communities confronted their own harsh environments, equally capable of reshaping daily life without warning. In the northern regions, cold swept across open plains with a speed that stunned any traveler unprepared for its force. In canyon territories, shade could drop temperatures sharply, turning stone corridors into natural wind tunnels. In subarctic forests, snow cover lingered for months, pressing families to refine their shelters, tools, and travel routes until efficiency became instinct. Like the Alpine villagers, these groups treated the land not as an obstacle, but as a complex system that had to be interpreted with accuracy. The similarity is striking. Two worlds separated by oceans, but ruled by the same unforgiving logic. Cold dictated the pace of life. Terrain dictated the structure of communities. Limited resources demanded precision, not excess. There was no room for careless decisions. Survival depended on a practiced ability to read signs in the landscape, the tilt of a slope, the flow of wind, the behavior of animals, the shifting texture of snow. Both cultures stepped into the same harsh classroom. Their solutions differed in form, but the lessons they learned followed the same unyielding rules of nature and necessity. In the Alps, a shelter was more than a structure. It was a calculation. Every wall, every angle, every choice of material reflected an intimate understanding of cold and wind. Stone huts framed against cliff faces absorbed daytime warmth and released it slowly through the night. Timber roofs were steep, built to shed heavy snow before it could crush the beams beneath. Even the placement of an entrance mattered. A doorway facing the wrong direction could channel freezing gusts straight into the living space. Alpine builders learned to borrow the mountain's own contours, using rock outcrops as natural shields and settling homes where the wind split rather than gathered. Their ingenuity extended below the surface as well. Snow caves carved into deep drifts acted like thermal capsules, trapping warmer air and protecting travelers caught far from home. Inside, the walls glistened with packed ice, forming insulation that softened the howl of the storm outside. What looked fragile from a distance was, in fact, a shelter designed with remarkable precision. Across North America, Native American communities crafted their own masterpieces of resilience. Earth lodges rose from river valleys with thick layers of packed soil covering timber frames, creating a structure that maintained stable temperatures even in harsh winters. Teepees on the plains balanced mobility with performance. Their conical shape cut the wind, while adjustable smoke flaps controlled airflow with surprising accuracy. In the canyon regions, cliff dwellings hid within rock alcoves, where natural overhangs deflected heat in summer and sheltered families from biting winds in winter. Though separated by continents and cultures, the logic was unmistakably parallel. Build low, build strong, build with the land rather than against it. Whether shaped from stone, soil, wood, or snow, each shelter stood as a testament to engineering born from necessity. Structures that turned the fiercest storms into challenges that could be endured rather than feared. In the high Alpine valleys, food was never a guarantee. Mountains restricted farmland, winters shortened growing seasons, and storms could cut communities off for weeks. To survive, families developed methods that turned scarcity into security. Meat from summer hunts was cured with salt, smoke, or cold wind, transforming perishable cuts into provisions that could endure the darkest months. Cheese, a hallmark of Alpine ingenuity, was more than a craft. It was a storage system. Milk that could spoil in a day became a durable source of energy, carried across passes or stacked in winter stores. Even foraged herbs and hardy plants were dried or steeped into broths that brought warmth when fresh food was impossible to find. Nothing in the Alps was taken for granted. Hunters tracked animals not just for the chase, but for timing, knowing that one well-planned hunt could feed families for weeks. Grain was milled with precision. Every edible plant was cataloged through generations of observation. In this world, sustenance required strategy as much as strength. Across North America, Native American communities faced similar challenges and responded with solutions refined through equally sharp attention to their environments. Pemmican stands as one of the most remarkable examples. A dense, portable mixture of dried meat and fat, engineered for longevity and high energy. Fish were split and dried in northern regions where sunlight and wind created natural preservation chambers. Berries became concentrated stores of nutrients through drying or pounding into cakes. In forested territories, knowledge of edible roots, grains, and seasonal plants guided entire cycles of gathering. The parallels are striking. Both cultures built food systems designed to outlast winter's grip, shaped by careful planning and a clear understanding of how to transform the fleeting abundance of warmer months into essential reserves. Their techniques reveal a shared truth. Survival favored those who treated sustenance as a deliberate, year-round endeavor. Survival in the Alps was never a solitary achievement. The terrain was too demanding, the winters too long, and the margin for error too narrow. Communities depended on shared labor, coordinated planning, and a deep sense of mutual obligation. When snow sealed the mountain passes, neighbors became lifelines. Families gathered in shared work parties to repair roofs before winter storms arrived. Herding routes were managed collectively, with seasonal decisions made through long discussions shaped by experience. A single household could not withstand an alpine winter alone. Resilience grew from cooperation, not isolation. Traditions reinforced this unity. Skills passed from elders to younger generations became communal assets. Knowledge of avalanche paths, the safest crossings, the timing of planting and harvest. Seasonal gatherings doubled as planning sessions, where people exchanged observations about shifting weather patterns or the state of grazing lands. Through shared effort, they turned a hostile environment into a manageable one. Across North America, Native American communities mirrored this dynamic in their own distinct ways. Tribal structures emphasized collective decision-making, especially in regions where winter or drought demanded coordinated responses. Hunting groups relied on synchronized movement, communication, and shared responsibility. Food distribution often followed structured patterns that ensured vulnerable members of the community were supported. Storytelling, councils, and gatherings were not just cultural events. They were systems for transferring essential environmental knowledge, strategic insights, and lessons drawn from generations of experience. Whether in a mountain village overlooking a frozen valley or a settlement on the plains preparing for a harsh season, the principle remained constant. Survival strengthened when people acted together. Physical resources mattered, but shared commitment mattered more. Lives were protected not only by shelter walls or stored provisions, but by the collective resolve of communities that understood their strength multiplied when united. When you step back from the details, the stone huts carved into alpine slopes, the earth-sheltered chambers of the plains, the snow caves, the teepees, the cliffside homes, a striking pattern begins to emerge. These structures, shaped continents apart, reveal a shared approach to problem-solving under pressure. Not imitation, not influence, but convergence. The same environmental demands forced different cultures to read the land with identical precision, and that clarity shaped their engineering choices. Alpine builders watched how snow drifted, how wind funneled through valleys, how stone absorbed heat. Native American builders observed airflow in narrow canyons, the insulating properties of packed earth, the balance between mobility and protection on open plains. Each insight emerged from thousands of lived moments, long winters, sudden storms, shifting seasons, until the environment itself became the guide. The parallels go beyond shelter. Food storage methods followed similar logic: preserve the most energy in the smallest weight, convert fresh resources into long-lasting supplies, and adapt techniques to the landscape's limits. Whether hanging meat high in alpine air or drying fish in northern forests, both cultures followed the same principle: preparation must outpace hardship. Even their social structures echoed one another. In mountains and on plains, survival favored groups that pooled labor, shared experience, and coordinated responses to environmental threats. A storm ignored individual skill; it pressed down on the entire community. The answer, in both worlds, lay in cooperation strengthened over generations. This is the universal blueprint beneath both traditions. Observe the land closely, design with purpose, refine through necessity, and anchor survival in the strength of collective effort. When nature pressed hardest, human ingenuity rose to meet it, on ridgelines in the Alps and across the wide, challenging landscapes of North America. In alpine territory, survival often hinged on a margin so thin it could vanish with a single misjudged step. Paths carved into rocky slopes offered the only links between scattered settlements, yet they became treacherous once frost hardened the ground. Travelers learned to move with calculated precision, reading the snow's texture, the pitch of the wind, and the faint creaks of shifting ice. A cloud bank rising over a ridge was not scenery. It was a warning that time was running out. The slightest delay could trap entire groups between approaching storms and impassable cliffs. North American communities living in unforgiving climates faced similar constraints. On the northern plains, a clear morning could turn deadly by midday as blizzards swept across open country with startling speed. Hunters and foragers learned to interpret distant signs: the movement of birds, the intensity of wind against the grass, the faint change in temperature signaling a front approaching. In forested regions, thin river ice demanded constant attention, for one miscalculation could plunge a traveler into water cold enough to extinguish breath in seconds. The shared reality across continents was this: survival depended not on bravado, but on accuracy. Mountains and plains punished haste, ignoring intention and rewarding only those who understood the limits of their terrain. Both worlds required people to move with deliberation, not fear, to recognize when to push forward and when to turn back. A journey was never simply about distance. It was about timing, weight, weather, and route, all held in a careful balance. These thin margins shaped entire cultures. They influenced how communities planned their seasons, structured their travel, and prepared for daily risks. The world they inhabited demanded constant interpretation. And in answering that demand, they developed strategies that reflected both caution and confidence. Traits forged in landscapes that allowed no room for error. Across the Alps, tools were never generic objects. They were shaped by the contours of the land itself. Ice axes carved from sturdy wood and fitted with iron points allowed travelers to anchor themselves on frozen slopes where a single slip could end a life. Broad-bladed knives doubled as carving tools and emergency implements for cutting through compacted snow. Even the design of pack frames reflected the demands of altitude. Narrow structures that kept weight close to the spine, allowing shepherds and traders to climb steep paths without losing balance. Every tool carried a story of refinement, altered and improved through countless encounters with terrain that forced innovation long before it rewarded it. North American communities crafted tools with the same clarity of purpose. On the plains and in northern forests, snowshoes evolved into essential winter gear, distributing body weight across wide frames so travelers could move quickly through drifts that would swallow an unprepared step. In subarctic regions, ice chisels opened fishing holes through thick lake surfaces, providing access to food even in the coldest months. Bow designs varied based on climate. Shorter, stronger bows thrived in dense woodlands, while longer designs suited open landscapes, where distance mattered more than maneuverability. The deeper you look, the more the parallels reveal themselves. Both cultures understood that tools had to match the terrain, rather than force the terrain to yield. A blade too brittle, a frame too heavy, a grip too short. These were not minor inconveniences, but potential threats to survival. Whether forged in Alpine forges or crafted beside northern rivers, effective tools emerged from the same principle. Design must answer the demands of the environment with exactness. In these tools, you can see the quiet brilliance of both worlds: ingenuity sharpened by landscape, perfected by necessity, and carried across generations as essential armor against the challenges of winter, altitude, and distance. In Alpine regions, controlling temperature inside a shelter was an ongoing battle, fought not with machines, but with architectural strategy. A stone wall might appear simple, yet its thickness, placement, and angle determined whether a home stored warmth or surrendered it to the wind. Fire pits were positioned low to create slow, rising heat that lingered through the night. Vent openings were carved small and high, allowing smoke to escape without draining precious warmth. Even flooring mattered. Raised wooden planks kept cold air from pooling at sleeping level, reducing the nightly struggle against freezing temperatures. These were not random choices. Each was a deliberate move in a larger system designed to counter winter's relentless reach. On the other side of the world, Native American communities achieved similar mastery using entirely different materials. Earth lodges combined soil, timber, and grass into structures that regulated temperature through mass and airflow. Heat from central hearths radiated outward, absorbed by thick walls before slowly returning to the living space. In areas where mobility was essential, teepees used animal hides layered with precision to hold warmth in winter and release excess heat in summer. Smoke vents could be adjusted depending on wind direction, transforming a simple opening into a finely tuned mechanism for climate control. Even cliff dwellings took advantage of rock's natural insulation, positioning homes in alcoves where sun exposure and shade worked together to stabilize indoor temperatures. The core principle in both cultures was the same: understand how heat moves and build accordingly. Cold was not an enemy to be defeated, but a force to be managed through careful design. These techniques reveal an impressive command of environmental physics, achieved long before modern engineering gave names to the processes at work. In the Alps, movement was dictated by the mountain itself. Families shifted livestock to higher pastures in summer, following routes that had been tested over generations. These paths were not arbitrary. They balanced grazing needs with safety, avoiding slopes known for unstable snow or sudden rockfall. Seasonal migration offered more than food for animals. It ensured human survival by distributing pressure on limited valley resources. Even traders adjusted their timing with exactness, waiting for windows when passes opened briefly before closing again under early storms. Movement was both opportunity and risk, requiring judgment shaped by countless journeys along unforgiving terrain. Across North America, mobility shaped life just as strongly. On the plains, communities followed bison herds, moving with the rhythms of the animals that sustained them. This mobility demanded structures that assembled quickly, traveled efficiently, and withstood high winds. Engineering challenges answered through innovations like the teepee's aerodynamic form and portable frame. In northern forests, hunters tracked seasonal migrations of caribou, navigating frozen lakes and dense woods with routes mapped by experience rather than written record. In canyon regions, movement followed water sources, shifting between higher and lower ground as temperatures and availability changed across the year. What stands out in both worlds is that movement was never random. It was a calibrated response to environmental constraints. Knowing when to travel, where to camp, and how far to push in a single day could decide outcomes long before winter arrived. Both cultures developed systems, routes, signals, seasonal markers, that transformed uncertain landscapes into structured calendars of opportunity. Movement was not escape from hardship, but a strategy for managing it. By aligning their rhythms with the land, these communities stayed ahead of cold, scarcity, and danger, demonstrating that survival often depended not on staying put, but on knowing exactly when to move. When examining Alpine and Native American survival systems side by side, the most striking revelation isn't their differences, but their shared logic. Stone shelters perched in high valleys and earth-covered lodges rising from river plains were responses to the same fundamental demands: warmth, durability, protection, and efficient use of limited resources. Snow caves carved into mountain drifts and cliff dwellings set within sandstone alcoves both transformed natural formations into strategic refuge. Across thousands of miles, communities crafted answers shaped not by exchange or imitation, but by necessity's persistent pressure. The convergence becomes clearer when viewed through the lens of environmental challenges. A blizzard sweeping across an alpine ridge forced the same decisions as a winter storm racing across the northern plains. Short growing seasons in mountain valleys presented the same dilemma as long freezes in subarctic forests: preserve food decisively or risk losing it entirely. Even the daily struggle to manage heat, to keep it inside a shelter without choking the interior with smoke, led both cultures to refine vents, door placements, and hearth designs with remarkable precision. This parallel evolution is not a coincidence. It is a testament to how humans, when confronted with unyielding landscapes, reach similar conclusions through observation and repetition. The tools differ, the materials differ, but the logic is nearly identical. Survive the wind by shaping structures that deflect it. Outlast the cold by storing concentrated energy. Move when the land requires it. Stay when it rewards stability. Strengthen the group because no individual can endure the worst seasons alone. These echoes across continents reveal something profound: that human ingenuity does not belong to one culture or region. It appears wherever harsh environments erase illusion and force clarity. And in that clarity, People separated by oceans crafted solutions that feel as though they were drawn from the same unseen blueprint.